world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
We are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. It is Monday, January 26th, as I am recording this. I'm probably going to do a live later to be tomorrow's podcast, so be looking out for that. And we got a lot to talk about. We always have a lot to talk about. Now, I think yesterday I was talking a lot about this shooting that happened in Minneapolis, where Alex Preddy was gunned down. He was on the ground. He was already detained, had no weapon. He had been recording and he had tried to help somebody who was in the process of being shoved down by ICE. And they beat him and then shot him. And it was horrific. Now, Donald Trump has not come out and said anything about, the violence, etc., that we need to tone it down. He hasn't said that they would be charged to the fullest extent of the law, nothing like that. But one of the things I wanted to discuss before moving past that is I think yesterday I kept calling him Petty. It is Pretty. I wanted to make sure I got his name right. Now, with everything going on, this administration thinks they are doing something. They think they're going to be winning. Donald Trump is coming to Iowa, coming here tomorrow, Tuesday. I will not be going. I am not going to go listen to him speak. I can barely stand listening to him speak in the clips I have to watch to get the stories. It is very hard. And how people think that somebody who talks like him has a genius level IQ, like he likes to say. B, is not cognitively impaired. It is ridiculous. He is so far gone. And you watch old clips of him, and while he wasn't the best speaker, it wasn't very well rehearsed, thought out, etc. And in some ways, I know I probably sound like he does too, because I start going and I just say whatever's on the top of my head, right? I don't have a script. But even when he was working, 20 years ago, when he was saying things unscripted, it was way more coherent than it is now. His thought processes don't actually line up anymore with what is going on. So I'm not going to go listen to him speak. And I know there's going to be protests, and I'm guessing they're going to be pretty big. Donald Trump is coming to a state where he has completely fucked us over, and he expects a warm welcome. Now, we're in the midst of winter anyway, so it's going to be cold temperature-wise, but he's not going to get a great welcome. Now, I've been hearing that the event venue is small, which wouldn't surprise me. That they're trying to maximize what it looks like for how full the crowd is. Because they need to play to his ego. Well, look, you sold out a packed house, but the house only held 1,000 people. Big difference from selling out 10,000 or 50,000 feet square, seat areas like he did when he was campaigning. But one of the things, he's coming to talk about economics. And like I said, he fucked this state over. When it comes to the economy, when it comes to farmers, he did us no favors. His tariffs and his trade war with China have led to China not buying U.S. soybeans. And we haven't found a buyer for the soybeans that we were planning to sell to China. So those are sitting and not going anywhere. They're not, they're in bins, but they're awaiting a sale that's not going to happen. And then you add the fact in that he cut out USAID, the foreign aid arm of the U.S. government, basically tried to shutter it. He brought out what he called America First Aid, which is dumb. It's a dumb name. But he was trying to say that this is going to be the better version of USAID. It's going to be, so much better that we're going to put America first and we're going to buy from American farmers first before we help anybody, etc. What he failed to realize, and this is Donald Trump in a nutshell, is that the law required USAID to buy from American farmers to begin with, if possible, unless the items we were giving in aid packages were not bought or were not able to be grown in the United States. Then we would have to buy them from wherever they are needed, or if we couldn't produce the volume needed. Like I know we do grow some rice here, but we don't grow a lot of it. If we need more rice for other countries than what we can produce, well, guess what? They're going to have to buy it from another country. But wheat, corn, soybeans, etc., we produce that in abundance here. So they buy from American farmers first, and a lot of farmers plant with guaranteed contracts, or what were guaranteed contracts until Donald Trump came along. They would go in saying, okay, well, I know if I plant this many thousand acres or this many acres with these seeds, I should get this many bushels of corn. I should have this much yield. They want me to guarantee them X number of bushels. I can honor that. I'm going to plant this with the intent that everything harvested from these acres are already sold on a guaranteed contract. And after I harvest, providing there's no weather damage and I get the yield I'm supposed to, I got a guaranteed payout. And they would do that. And then he cancels all the contracts, rips up USAID, goes to this America First aid program, um, and brings it back at a fraction of what they were doing before, because he's dumb. He has no idea of what's going on, and the people around him are just as unintelligent as he is. They can't get good advisors right now with uh, everything going on, in part because all of the halfway decent Republicans want nothing to do with Donald Trump, because they know being connected to him is going to be a stench they can't get rid of. And Donald Trump's time is getting short. I really do. I think his time is coming to an end. Um, and they can see it. The Republicans, they're getting ready. I've talked about it in numerous podcasts. You have Representative Don Bacon of Omaha saying that if Donald Trump took military action in Greenland, that they had the votes to impeach and remove him. And I think those conversations are happening more and more frequently. How far can we let this go? How far can we let that go before we push back? Um, right now, speaking of pushback, there is a bill sitting in the U.S. Senate that they are going to be voting on tomorrow, I believe, or they have to vote on by the end of the month anyway, to fund the government, or we face a partial government shutdown. Now, this funding bill is one that did pass the House of Representatives, and how it still got 7 Democratic representatives to support it, I don't know. But it included $10 billion of funding for ICE, with no real safeguards in place about how they spend the money, what they do with it, uh, anything about reorganizing them, trying to weed out certain people. Nothing, no changes. Well, it made its way to the Senate. And Chuck Schumer, who I've been very disillusioned with, he has been a very weak minority leader. Um, I really thought he would have done more as minority leader. Not that they can do a lot, um, but it seems like his biggest play when it comes to anything has been, well, we're going to write a strongly worded letter, and that's just ridiculous, right? Like they need to do more to help the American people, to help stop these Republicans. So Chuck Schumer has said when it comes to this funding bill anyway that they're not going to pass it. It sounds like most Democrats are going to vote against funding the government, and we're going to be heading toward another partial shutdown. Now, this will not be nearly as bad of a shutdown as what we dealt with in in 25 last year in October because of some of the guarantees that the administration gave and some of the things that were passed in the partial funding bill that they put through to reopen the government. They guaranteed food stamps and Medicaid and things like that will be paid until the end of September. Now, why September? Well, because that's the end of the fiscal year. And they know when we get up close to that ledge, with it being an election year and every member of the House of Representatives and one third of the Senate being up for reelection, they're not going to be as willing to face a government shutdown in November. Um, so Democrats are saying we're not going to vote to fund ICE. Now, there's one exception so far, and that being John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania. Ever since he had, I believe it was a stroke, and he came back, he has not been the same person. In those kind of things can affect your personality. So now that he came back, he's talking more and more Republican like. And he said he's not going to vote to shut the government down. He doesn't believe the government should ever be shut down. So what he's saying is no cause is worth funding the government. So he'll vote for anything to keep the government open because that's more important. And giving $10 billion more to ICE is apparently okay when we are watching ICE and Border Patrol, etc., shoot American citizens. So we'll see what happens with that funding bill. And Republicans in the House also put in what could be a poison pill to this bill. You may remember back in the one big bullshit bill that they put through a measure. It was either in that or it was in the funding bill for opening the government back up. One of the two. They put forward a measure that allowed Senate Republicans who had their phone records looked into by Jack Smith in his investigation into January 6th, that they should be able to get millions of dollars in compensation in $500,000 increments. Well, if they did this, it's a half a million. If they did this, it's an additional half million. If they did this, it's an additional half million, including things like looking at text messages, looking at call logs, looking at this, looking at that, like if they physically seize the phone, etc. But why only Senate Republicans? Well, because they put it in there and then the House just voted to keep it in. I thought that was going to be one of the things that would have killed the bill, but it didn't. And now the House is saying, yeah, we know how bad this looks, and we're kind of pissed. I think the reason Republicans in the House put it in there is they're pissed that Senate Republicans only looked after themselves. If it had been for all congressional Republicans, they might have had a different story. However, as they're dealing with it, I think the House was saying, okay, if you guys want to really fund the government, you're going to have to accept it because we took a beating over that being in that bill, and we need to clean up our image. So be on the lookout to see what they do with that funding bill if they end up actually passing it through the Senate. Now, I think they're going to need Democratic support to get it through, and either it goes through without ICE funding, which I think is a very real possibility, um, or it goes through without, or I should say, with more safeguards for ICE, more limits to what they can do, harsher penalties for them doing things. Um, because I think when this is all said and done, these ICE agents, and not just ICE, everybody up and down the board is going to have to answer for everything they're doing. I mean, you watch the video of Alex Preddy being attacked. He's on the ground. He's helpless. They're beating him. They're pistol whipping him, and then they shoot him. In fact, from one angle, his weapon was taken away. An ICE agent had his gun, and then they afterward tried to say, "Well, he had a gun, so we had to take him down," and he was brandishing it, which never was the case. And I think the ICE agents involved, et cetera, are going to be held accountable eventually. Now, there is no statute of limitations for murder charges, or I believe accessory to murder charges. Somebody asked if Donald Trump could potentially be charged with anything for the murder of Alex Preddy or Renee Good in Minneapolis, and that is a possibility, potentially as an accessory, especially if we come to find out that there was any evidence that he told them to ignore rules, ignore laws, like if orders were coming straight from the top. Um, the fact of the matter is, though, I don't think it's going to matter. Donald Trump, I don't think, is going to be healthy enough to make it to the end of his term. Now, there was an event down at Mar-a-Lago, speaking of Donald Trump's health, and I don't quite know the whole context here, but apparently Donald Trump was talking to other Republicans, and they had a clip of Jimmy Carter's funeral going. And Donald Trump just kind of said out of the blue, well, that could be me in 10 years. And if that is him in 10 years, that means that would be no more than 7 after he's out of the presidency. And I think that's being very generous. I don't think he's got 10 years. He may not have 10 months. Um, his health is not good. You watch the way he goes. And it is very troubling. He did an interview with the New Yorker, and was it the New Yorker or New York Magazine? One of the two. Anyway, and the reporter was talking to him and asking him specifically about his father, Fred Trump. And we've talked about Fred Trump a little bit, and I had never really looked into Fred Trump until recently. But toward the end of his life, Fred Trump was battling with Alzheimer's. And what they would do is they would put Fred Trump in a room, an office building. Basically, they gave him his own private office, or maybe it was even they just moved the headquarters stuff out of his office into a different room or whatever. But he would go into a room where it was his office, and they would give him papers to shuffle around and to look through, and not even all of it would be real figures, maybe not even current figures. And it was stuff for him to sign, and it was things for him to look over. People would come in, ask him questions, but none of it was real, right? They would come in, they would talk to him about things. He'd shuffle these papers around like he was doing the job he had done for years, but he was no longer in control. Well, this reporter for the magazine asked Donald Trump how he felt about his father having dementia or having Alzheimer's and suffering like that. And Donald Trump said, "Well, he uh, he had what is it, that affects your," and he kind of points to his head. And then Caroline Levitt chimes in, goes, "Alzheimer's." He goes, "Yeah, I don't care that he had that. I'm not worried about that." And of course, then went on to say about how he's in great shape and this and that. I think Donald Trump knows he is suffering from it potentially, or he's at least partially aware that he could be uh, susceptible, but he doesn't want to allow people to have those thoughts about him. He doesn't want to think about his own mortality. But then he does things like sends out multiple emails, and he just sent out another fundraising email. I haven't looked into fully yet, but I saw an article about it where he was once again asking for donations to help him get into heaven, to do good things with. And how Donald Trump could think with everything on his hands that he could ever possibly get into heaven is beyond me. Now, Donald Trump I think he is very worried about his own mortality. I think he is aware that he is suffering dementia. You look at how he talks, he forgets the word, he's forgetting words, his vocabulary is limited. Um, I've known people who have had strokes, and one of the people I know that in my life that has had one. Not long after, as she was recovering in the early days, she couldn't think of a descriptive word if she didn't like something other than bad. Okay, and everything. Oh, I don't like that. That's bad. Oh, that was so bad. Oh, that was bad. It was the only word she would use. And then you look at Donald Trump when he's talking about people that he doesn't like. deranged, they're lunatics, uh, they're you know, they're crazy, specifically about women. Oh, they're nasty. He uses nasty a lot. He doesn't have a very large vocabulary when it comes to his insults of choice. Now, I don't know if that's because he is dealing with mental problems stemming from a stroke or something like that, or if it is because he is actually impaired. I don't know. But Donald Trump is suffering from some kind of, in my mind, dementia. He's taken multiple cognitive tests, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, by the way he describes it, he calls them IQ or aptitude tests. But then he describes what he has to do and says how he aced them with flying colors. Well, first of all, when you're giving somebody a cognitive exam, like what he's talking about is the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, you typically do not tell the person taking it how bad they did. You tell them that they did great, regardless. One, because you want their cooperation in the future. And two, you don't want they're already in a fragile state. Maybe they know something's wrong or they feel like they're off in some way, right? And Donald Trump, it was already an egomaniac. He was already a raging narcissist. You don't want to tell somebody like that that he is, impaired in some way. He wouldn't take it very well. So you tell him he did great, but he talks about having to match the letters and the numbers and remember the five words and identify the three animals and those kind of things. He is describing the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, and he has taken multiple cognitive assessments, and typically you only get those if they are worried that you may be suffering from something, or they know you're suffering from something, or you've had some kind of traumatic brain injury like that, where maybe you've had a fall, maybe you've had a concussion, something like that, just to see where you're at. But no, he doesn't want to admit to any of that. But yet he sends things out like, "Oh, well, help me get to heaven," and he's talking to Republicans saying, "Well, I could be gone in 10 years." I don't know that he makes it to the end of his term with his health. Period. And I think he's aware of that. Now, when it comes to other ways he could end up not being president by the end of his term, there are three alternatives, but one's not really feasible. I don't think he resigns. I just don't. I don't think he resigns at all. He doesn't have it in him. Maybe if this was 20 years ago and you could try to convince him that it was in his best interest and you could save him politically somehow by giving him a pardon. Um, I don't think he is cognitively aware enough that that is even an option at this point. And then you have uh, could they use the 25th Amendment? Well, maybe. JD Vance and the cabinet would have to go to Congress and say, dude's impaired. We need to remove him. And Congress would have to agree. Now, would the Democrats agree with Republicans to get rid of Donald Trump? I think so. I think they would. Um, because it's in everybody's best interest for Donald Trump to be gone. Now, beyond that, you have uh, impeachment. And I talked about it a little bit earlier. Don Bacon, the representative from Omaha, has already said they have the votes to impeach and remove Donald Trump should he use the military on Greenland. Well, I think they're having these discussions behind closed doors about other uses of the impeachment. And there's going to come a point when they decide that it is time to move away from Donald Trump, and it's going to be a dog pile. The more I think about it, the more I believe that it's going to be one of those things where once they know they have the votes and once they know they've got to 218, they're going to bring articles of impeachment out on the floor. It's going to get a vote. And I think the reason why I don't think Mike Johnson is going to try to block it or anything is I think it's going to be met with, okay, here's all the Republicans we need to vote to vacate. Democrats are on board to vacate you too. You bring this up for a vote, or we're vacating you. We have they are going to have everything in a row, I believe. Even though this Congress seems incompetent, I think when they make the move for Donald Trump, I think they are going to go ahead and they're going to have everything in a row. And then when that bill for impeachment being led by a Republican hits the floor, I think it's going to be a dog pile, just an absolute dog pile, kind of like what happened with the Epstein files. And then it's going to move to the Senate, and they're going to remove him and remove him quick. Now everybody says that JD Vance will be worse. I don't think so. Two reasons. One, JD Vance is going to be listening to the Republican Party as a whole, and they're going to give him very strict marching orders to fix things for whichever election is coming up, whether it's midterms this fall or whether it is the general in 28. The goal is going to be to fix the image of the Republican Party so that they have a chance to win. And then he is going to get pushed, right? Like they're going to push back against him. And if the Republicans already moved against Donald Trump, they're going to be going looking at him going, we can do the same to you. Not to mention the fact that he doesn't have the pull over Congress that Donald Trump does, etc. He just won't be able to go to Congress and say, okay, we need to get things done and we need to move and get this passed, etc., and have them vote the way he wants. All right, now I want to talk about Greg Bovino for a minute. And I did a TikTok earlier talking about him, and I called him Dan, and I said it numerous times. And I think I might have, but his name's Greg. I don't know where I got the name Dan from, but either way, doesn't matter. Greg Bovino, the head of Border Patrol, is getting demoted. Donald Trump has decided he's out. They didn't quite say directly that he is being fired. He's being demoted ahead of his retirement. And they are bringing in, I think it's Tom Homan, Donald Trump's border czar, uh, in order to run things in Minneapolis and try to de-escalate the situation. It's not going to work to de-escalate. They're both horrible people. Donald Trump needs to actually get ICE and immigration out of Minneapolis, but this isn't about actually going after fraud or immigration, etc. This is about retribution. Minneapolis and Minnesota in general voted against Donald Trump. It's the home of Tim Walz, and it seems to be a space where um, Republicans are losing. So Donald Trump is doing his best to intimidate people, and that's one of the things they want. So Bovino is out, and it's a token at this point, right? It's a stepping stone. They're getting rid of him, thinking, well, if we do this, we took a beating because of him. If we get rid of him, it'll make things slightly better. People will back off of us a little bit, and then we move on. Now, are they going to move on to moving somebody else? Maybe Kristi Noem could be potentially next as the head of DHS. That they could put her out on the chopping block as well. And I don't know if they make that move yet, um, because, well, when it comes to things, Donald Trump is usually a day late and a dollar short. Well, actually, if you know his financial history, usually multiple dollars short, but that's another story. The thing is, moving Bovino is just an act, right? It doesn't matter that they are stepping him down because they're not going to change the policies of ICE. They still want ICE doing the same things. They just want that guy to not be the face of it, to look like they are making changes. And in the days before social media, that might have worked. But we're not in pre social media anymore. Everybody has phones, everybody has a recording device of some kind on them almost at all times anymore. Now, I say everybody, and I know there are going to be some people who do not, but way past the majority, we're probably talking about 95% plus have some recording capability um, on them at all times anymore. And we're going to see people who maybe weren't social media active, or even politically aware. They're getting involved and they're getting pissed. This is not going to end up well for Republicans. Um, I've got a coworker, and we talk weekly because I only really work with her once a week about politics. And she always starts off with, "Okay, explain it to me like I'm 5." And I go on what I try to explain to her as best I can, whatever she's currently thinking. And we were just talking the other day, and she said, again, explain it to me like I'm 5. And I started to explain it to her, and she goes, "Wait, really?" I go, "Yeah, we were talking about immigration." She goes, "Well, why is it they're only going after people from Africa and South America and, south of the border?" And I straight up told her, I said, "It's their skin tone. That's why you don't hear anything about immigrants coming from Europe or Canada, really. It's not about them. It's about skin tone and it's about race." She goes, and she had, because she wasn't really political until recently, no idea. No, she didn't even fathom that that could be the whole reason behind it all. And I'm constantly breaking things down and explaining them to her. And when I do, she says it makes a lot of sense, which I'm hoping I'm also doing for the rest of you. But there's going to be more and more people like that who really weren't political, who are now becoming political. And politics is becoming more ingrained in everything we do. I miss the days when politics was boring, when, you know, sure, you maybe didn't like a politician or you didn't like what Congress was doing, but they could mostly agree. Like, whether or not to feed people was not an issue. The question just became, okay, how many dollars are we going to allocate to it? It wasn't that we didn't need to feed people, it was just how much spending. And it's gone away from that now, where Republicans now don't want anybody to have access to food. They would rather everybody starve unless you pull yourself up by the bootstraps, get a better job, etc. And that's just ridiculous, right? Republicans are they've lost their own way and they're going to have to refind it when Donald Trump is gone. So when this administration is gone, Republicans are going to have to figure out, how do they rebrand, how do they regroup. Problem is they're going to be facing a bigger problem. And ICE is just the tip of the iceberg, pun intended, because there's going to be massive trials and public hearings, etc. And I think there's going to be our own version of the Nuremberg trials as we are dealing with this. And it is going to be, um, horrendous for people, for the Americans to go through, for us to go through. But we have to have all of it laid bare and everybody held accountable, top to bottom, for everything that they were responsible for. And if you remember your history, the Nuremberg trials, uh, "I'm just following orders" was not an accepted defense. Now, uh, it's been less than a month since we invaded Venezuela. We captured and kidnapped effectively their president, Maduro. Now, the right would say, "Well, you're cheering Maduro, etc." No, Maduro was horrible. But the way we went about deposing him was not necessarily legal or the correct thing to do. And the fact that we only put in his VP as the new president didn't mean a regime change. It didn't effectively do anything other than change the face of the person at the top. Well, Delcy Rodriguez is that individual. She is now president of Venezuela. And she basically said they've had enough of Washington control in Venezuela, that they are going to run things themselves, that they are not beholden to Donald Trump or Washington, D.C. Stop short of calling out Donald Trump. Now, we will see if he backs off or if he doubles down. Now, knowing Donald Trump, he typically doubles down. But she's saying enough's enough. We are not part of Venezuela, is what she's saying. That, they're not going to raise the American flag and they're not going to become an American territory, anything like that. And how did Donald Trump expect this to go anyway? Did he expect them just to say, "Oh, yes, Donnie, we appreciate everything you did. Make us the next territory or make us a state"? Was he hoping that they would want to become a member of the United States and say, and join us, to the point that he would get honored and remembered for all time of adding a state the to the union, to our country. I mean, if he wants to add a state so badly, why not add Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico would be uh, a great state to add, but Donald Trump is uh, not thinking like that. So I don't know what he planned here, but Dulce Rodriguez is basically saying we need to get American control out of Venezuela and that they don't want us there, which could end up ultimately leading to some kind of an armed conflict. But Donald Trump, again, won't worry about that till it actually happens. See, he considers the Venezuelan deal done. And he, even if he walks away from it, he's going to find a way to spin it because he finds a ways to back things out and walk away without actually backing down. Um, he'll find an off ramp, right? Well, they're doing everything better. It's so much better without Maduro being there. We did what we set out to do, and he'll walk away. And they're thanking us for it. And as long as she comes out and basically says, "Well, thank you for getting rid of Maduro," he would find himself justified, at least in his own mind, for what they did in Venezuela. Now, I don't know what that is going to mean going forward for us and Venezuela. Now, they've been trying to pass uh, a couple of bills through Congress trying to limit Donald Trump's ability to further use the military in both Venezuela and Greenland. And both are being met with resistance, but they are getting Republican support. So there is some resistance coming out of his own party, and he doesn't realize it yet. I guarantee you he doesn't. Um, it's just not a good thing for Donald Trump right now. He's going to be getting hit by all sides, and it's getting worse. Um, and he's not even aware, or uh, it's going to catch him by surprise because he believes, because they are only showing him positive things about himself, that everybody loves him the way he thinks that they should love him, and that they really think that he really thinks he's the greatest president of all time, and he is going to be surprised when he is confronted with the reality that people actually can't stand him. When he gets here and they're protesting, they're booing him, etc. I guarantee you, he's going to come out and say things like, "Well, there were some people that were booing me, but oh, that's okay. But how could they hate me? I'm the most successful president." He's going to say all that in front of his base, where he's safe. Um, Now, you notice he said he's not going to the Super Bowl this year, which is fine. He really shouldn't go anyway. Presidents typically don't go. The last time a president went to the Super Bowl was Donald Trump, just last year, but before that it had been like almost 50 years. They just don't attend those things because it takes the spotlight off of the event itself, and you know puts the focus on them. Well, that's what Donald Trump prefers. He prefers the spotlight to be on himself. Now, Donald Trump is not going to the uh, Winter Games in Italy this year. The U.S. contingent is not going to have Donald Trump there at all, in part because it is not legal for him to be in Italy. As a convicted felon, uh, he's not welcome. Now, I don't know if they would make an exception because he is the head of the United States, because he's head of state. If that would change things, it might, but he's not going. They're sending JD Vance and some other people. And I think it's actually, I can't believe I'm saying this, a smart move on the part of Donald Trump, because they are doing sort of with JD Vance something that Joe Biden should have done with Kamala Harris. While it's not going to have a good effect by having JD Vance out front and center, because it's going to remind people how closely connected to Donnie he is, um, having JD out there is going to end up being a good thing, because it's going to uh, showcase him a little bit. And people are going to be at least familiar with JD Vance. Where Kamala Harris, spent most of 4 years in the background being a typical VP, that people weren't familiar with her enough that it led to problems, right? Like they kept saying, "Well, who is she? What does she stand for?" Who, they didn't. The American people were not accustomed to Kamala Harris, and at least Donald Trump is doing a better job of having JD Vance out there a little more, um, which means when the time comes, and I think it's still going to be soon-ish, that JD Vance will be more known to everybody. Not that it's going to help them in 28. I don't think there's any way the Republicans win in 28. It's just, I think that is what they're going for. Now, uh, there was a story came out and talking about the Kennedy Center. Now, a couple things came out about the Kennedy Center. One, this guy whose name I can't remember, he was appointed as like the chief financial officer, one of the board members, or something like that, by Donald Trump. And he's a Trump supporter. He's a loyalist, and comes out and says, "Well, the going back the last like 5 years, Kennedy Center's been losing money." But as people who are more familiar with those numbers go, yeah, but that's not accurate because the Kennedy Center is a nonprofit. There are always donations. There are endowments, which are uh, donations made like from somebody's will out of like a trust or something. Um, there are just regular charitable contributions, etc. Charitable donations from corporations, etc., using it as a tax write-off, all sorts of things. And none of that was included in this report saying that the Kennedy Center had been losing so much money. So Donald Trump comes out after hearing that I'd been losing money. He goes, "Well, I've been losing money for years." He goes, "It really wasn't my fault. They'd been losing money for years. But see, what we're hearing now is they are losing money in reality because all of these acts at all of these places are no longer getting tickets. They are no longer um, actually honoring their commitments. They're backing out. They're paying the fee for cancellation and not actually having their event at the Kennedy Center, rather than be connected to Donald Trump, specifically after he put his name on it. Which, if this sounds familiar, it should be. Donald Trump opens a business, or puts his name on a business in this case, and suddenly it's facing financial difficulty. This is a man who has gone bankrupt like 6 or 7 times, um, and has been able to, fail at everything he's done. He's failed at a university. He failed at a charity. Hell, Trump charities ended up being uh, stripped in New York. They were closed by court order. They were folded because they weren't actually um, doing what they said they were doing with the money. They were raising it, but they weren't actually doing anything charitable with the money. It was just going into the pockets of the Trump organization. He closed 2 casinos and Trump Water and Trump Steaks and all sorts of things. He'd put his name on something, think he'd make a buttload of money, and then he'd fail. Why? Because he always fails. And that's just who Donald Trump really is. Now, it's telling how far we've come in this country. And I was watching old reruns of The Twilight Zone from the 60s recently. And it was interesting. Something different to watch, something I hadn't seen in a while. But there's one episode in the 4th season. It's called He Lives. And it starts with just a small group of men. This, I'd say, kid, maybe late teens, early 20s at the oldest, was standing there wearing what would appear to be a German Nazi outfit. Now, it wasn't quite the same because they had different emblems because they couldn't obviously use the same uh, imagery because they were trying to prove a point. But he's out there and you listen to the way they are talking. And this guy is very clearly pro Nazi Germany. And now this was recorded and it was supposed to be in the 60s. But he's very clearly pro Nazi Germany with the way he is talking. But I was listening very closely to what he was talking about. And he was talking about the grievances. It was the immigrants. It was, unpure blood, non-Americans, people speaking other languages. They're coming in to be criminals. And a lot of the way he was talking in this show was mirroring what we hear out of this administration talking about immigrants, about the economy, about why people's lives suck, etc. It was very telling. And then some Americans that were standing there listening kicked the shit out of the guy for talking that way. And it continues on, and of course, it dips into the normal Twilight Zone, uh, bizarro, you know, side of things, where at one point he's getting coached and mentored by the actual, like, the ghost of Adolf, and is telling him how to rile up a crowd. Well, then he starts riling up a crowd, and he actually draws a crowd, even with pictures of Adolf and other leaders behind him. And then he ends up dying at the end without actually succeeding. Uh, but it made a point in this whole episode was that just because that ideology was beaten at the end of World War II, it doesn't mean it hasn't gone away. And I just noticed the stark parallels between the way this guy was talking in this episode, written in the 60s, and of course, he was meant to be the villain of the show. And they were trying to showcase that this was evil intentions, etc., by connecting it back to Hitler and all of those things. And yet now we hear some of that same rhetoric being spoken by people on the right, by the MAGAs, by Republicans in general. It's very telling about all of it, and it just shows how far things have changed. I wanted to bring it up just because I thought it was interesting, um, and how I guarantee you, the way MAGA is, they would miss the point if they saw that episode today. They would see it, and they would say things like, "Well, yeah, he kind of makes a lot of sense. Why are they beating the shit out of him? Oh no, they just don't understand his message. Why are they trying to compare him to Hitler and all kinds of things?" You could see the apologists already, and we have people in the political right on this country that would welcome him with open arms, and they don't even realize it. We need to, when we get power back, one of the things we are doing right now, and we are showing with what is going on in Minneapolis and other places with these protests, there are more of us than there are of them. They just haven't realized we are angry enough now to deal with it. Um, Now, I think the Republicans are hoping that with us being angry, that it's going to lead to some kind of violence, and that it is going to lead to them justifying everything they're doing. We'll see they're violent. It's not going to work. For the most part, the protests have been peaceful. And for those people that are saying it's not doing anything or that protesting isn't helping, well, yes, it is. One, you're letting your voices be known. You are sending a clear message to our elected officials that we are not happy with what is going on right now and they need to do something. Beyond that, the more attention we can keep bringing to it, especially through platforms like this and others, um, we need to focus on it so that more and more people are aware. Like I told you about my coworker who said just even a couple of years ago, she was not very political, was completely oblivious to what was going on state and federal level, really. Didn't really pay attention to any of it and was just cruising through life, didn't really care. And there's a lot of people like that. But the more this imagery and stuff gets out, the more you are going to start getting people to go, "Holy shit, I never thought that could happen here. Jesus Christ, why wasn't I aware of it?" And they're going to start reflecting and they are going to start getting involved. And the more people that get involved, the better. And we need to focus now on continuing the protests and doing what we can through the courts to stop this stuff, as well as um, gearing up for the midterms because we are going to have to try to vote our way out of this. It may not be the only thing we need to do, but it's where we need to start. I do not think it is time for any sort of an armed uprising yet. Um, I've seen other creators say that it may take that. No, it just needs for the Democrats to get in charge to actually have some wherewithal to go after the people that were responsible very publicly and make sure this never happens again and put some safeguards in place, whether that be through amendments, whether that be through laws, whether that be increasing, uh, penalties for certain things. I don't know what the full answer is, but they need to do something to prevent this from ever happening again. One of the last things I want to talk about is TikTok. Now, TikTok's been having some issues. And that's in part because they have been moving the servers over. Okay, I don't know how long this is going to take. Uh, and they're messing with a lot of people. I'm seeing creators that have had decent followings, bigger followings than mine, get taken down. Um, a prominent member of the left, very vocal, is Hawk on TikTok, and his backup account, Hawkeye Whack a Mole, got taken down just the other day. He made a new backup account, of course. And we don't know what kind of filter, what kind of restrictions are going to be put in place, if anything. Um, and of course, you have no choice but to agree to their terms of service. So of course, I did, and I'm going to try to deal with it as best I can. I'm not going to change my content. If they want to take me down, if they want to demonetize me, whatever, I don't care. Okay, they can do that. Right now I'm having trouble even getting my videos posted and getting any amount of views. Hopefully this is only temporary. We will see if the suppression continues. And if it gets to the point where TikTok's unusable, I will have to find another place. Now, you found me here on YouTube or Spotify, and I'm working on keeping Spotify updated. It is a little more difficult than the other platforms because of it's not as friendly for integration as far as automation and stuff. Still working on that. Also looking at trying to find ways to automate to other places like Substack and Clapper, and maybe even some other apps as well. If I can find ones that work with automation that actually have a decent user base where I can get the information out. But this is just another reminder, not just for myself, but for all of the creators that you follow on all sorts of social media sites. Um, we need to be banding together. And just because you watch somebody's content on one place does not mean you shouldn't follow them on others. So if you're looking for myself, the Rational Boomer, anybody else, Will, even people outside of the political sphere, and it's just somebody you like for whatever reason, uh, go find them on other places because we don't know how long we're going to be dealing with TikTok. We don't know how long it's going to be around. TikTok could go the way of what they did to Twitter. It could become just as bad as Truth Social. We don't know. And we don't know how long this is going to last because, I mean, what would be hilarious is if the parent company of uh, TikTok, ByteDance, if they just released a new app that was effectively TikTok called something different, and they just said, okay, well, everybody migrate over there. And if they do that, well, I'd probably jump over there as well. And I'm not talking about Red Note because I don't trust the app um, at all. Everybody jumped over there right away, and I was skeptical of it. I still am because we had never really, it wasn't one we had heard of until TikTok was facing a ban. And I really thought it was going to be way more nefarious than what TikTok itself was. So, going to continue doing my content. If my account on TikTok goes away, gets banned, whatever, I will probably just start posting my shorts directly to YouTube instead, and go from there. And still continue to get posting out on Blue Sky and Spotify. Just remember to follow not just me, but all of your favorite creators everywhere on there because it does help them out in everything they do. All right, that is going to do it for today's episode of the Analytical Iowan podcast. Like I said in the open, I'm probably going to do a live after this. So that will be Tuesday's podcast. And sometime coming up, I'm going to probably do another um, appearance over on the Rational Boomer. I don't know if I'm going to do it see if I can do a joint podcast with Mike and have us record it as well, or how that's going to work, and maybe do that because that seemed to work out okay the last time. So keep an eye out for those things that are coming up. And as always, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. I hope you have a great day, and we will be back tomorrow, where I'm going to probably be talking a little. Well, tomorrow is going to be the live, and then on Wednesday you'll be hearing about the fallout from Donald Trump's appearance here in Iowa. So thank you for taking the time to join me. Hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again later.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.